Today's video is all about shaping metal and working with body filler. Have you ever struggled to get your body filler laser straight? Well, I have too, but this video is all about the tips and techniques that are going to help you get that panel straight and give you a flawless repair. So let's dig into it. Howdy, Chris here. Welcome back to Garage Noise. Today we're working on this Jeep Cherokee. Another interesting repair here. I'm excited to get started on this, but we have some damage on this quarter panel and on this door, and this goes inside the jamb a little bit. Good little whack there, so we're going to straighten this out, and I'll show you how we go about that. But we also have some damage on this fender here. It looks pretty bad and it could be replaced. I did order a fender, so I've got the new fender over here. This is an aftermarket fender. It was actually really reasonably priced. Debating on whether to repair this fender or replace it. If I replace this fender, chances are I'm going to need to blend into this hood, so we have to detrim this hood. We've got to prep out the hood, and chances are, since we're in an open garage, we're not painting in a booth, we probably have to buff this hood after we paint it. We'll have to blend into this door. We'll have to detrim the door as well, and we'll have to prep and blend into that door, which there's also costs involved in that. If I were to repair this fender, I think I could get away with not blending into the hood and not blending into the door and getting a good color match. It would save us that time and labor. I may just start pulling on this fender a little bit, just see how well it comes out. It may come out pretty easy, and it may be more beneficial just to repair this fender. And let's start by just doing some glue pulls on this fender, see where we're at. Today we're not going to get too in depth into glue pulling. I just want to give you an idea of what's going on here. We've got a bridge and we've glued right on the body line, and I'm putting pressure on that while I'm tapping down the high areas or that crown so we can start to straighten out this metal, get it back into specs. Yeah, I definitely. Okay, so we're well into repairing this fender. We've taken some time and we've glue pulled as much as we can out of this. Darius went ahead and took out the fender liner so I can get back there, and we're going to use a hammer and dolly and this flat spoon, and we're going to start metal finishing this. We'll straighten out all the dents. I'll get behind there with the dolly. I'll show you how we're going to do that. Straighten it out, and then we'll put a skim coat of filler on this. So I did the glue pulling first, but we could have just took that fender liner out, went in from the backside and hammered and dollied a lot of that out without glue pulling. But I wanted to use my glue pulling tools, see what we could accomplish with glue pulling. A quicker way would have just been to go to a hammer and dolly. I'm leaving the paint on here because I can still see where the dents are. We've got a low spot right in there, so I want to push on that low and tap this high area around it. So body line right here, I'm putting the edge of my dolly on that body line, pushing on it, and I'm tapping down this crown right here. There's a dent right here. We're going to push out on that dent with the dolly. I'm going to tap around it. So I'm off the dolly right now. Okay, now I'm going to go on the dolly. Yeah, that's much better. Okay, we'll work this dent out right here. So I'm using the flat part on this. Slapping this out. It's got a little crown right here. We're going to slap that out. There's really two basic techniques to using a hammer and dolly. you can use that hammer on the dolly or off the dolly. Now when you're using it on the dolly, you want to place that dolly behind the dent, right on the center of that dent, behind the panel or fender, and then you want to tap down the crown around that as you apply pressure on the center of that dent. That's going to help release the energy in that dent, flatten out that metal. Now once you've done that, you could use the hammer on the dolly. So you may have a few little waves or a few small dings that you need to straighten out. So you can place that dolly right on that panel and hammer on the dolly. Now this will stretch the metal. You're stretching the metal anytime you hammer on the dolly. But for those minor imperfections, you can hammer on the dolly to remove those. After hammering out this metal, we went ahead and ground it down to prepare it for body filler.
It's not perfect. There's still a few little dents and dings, a few little waves, but it's perfect for just a skim coat of filler. Now that we've saved this fender, we're going to save time with the prep and the painting of other panels and the wet sanding and buffing of those panels as well. Could probably work it just a little bit more, but it's good enough for filler.
I'm cleaning and wiping this down with some 70% isopropyl alcohol to prepare it for body filler. The body filler we're using today is the upol lightweight gold.
So we're going to mix it up. We're going to fold this in so it's all one uniform color. You want to try and avoid introducing air into this filler, so you kind of want to fold it in. All right, let's start at the front. We're just going to go right from that paint edge. I'm just going to get a little bit on my spreader, not a ton, and we're just going to spread it right from where we sanded, where we ended our sanding. I like to go over the paint edge. I don't want a primer over a paint edge and a body filler edge. I want a primer over one, because when if that primer shrinks, we'll have two opportunities for it to shrink into an edge, and I only want to give it one opportunity. I'm pressing it into the panel. Once I get it pressed in, I'm going to go back over it with lighter pressure, so I'm not going to press as hard. I'm just going to put some on here. All right, we're just going to leave it like that. Okay, so we got our first coat of filler on here. We're going to start block sanding this out, but first, before we start block sanding this, I'm just going to knock this down, smooth it out with this orbital sander and some 80 grit sandpaper. So we just want to knock the roughness off. We're not trying to get it straight. Okay, now we're ready to start blocking this. We've got it roughed in with the orbital sander. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put some dry guide coat on this. This is going to show us and expose any high or low areas that are in our filler. And I'm going to start by blocking this section right here. Typically you want to use the longest block possible. I've got this medium-sized block, and I'm going to work my way from one end to the other, blocking in sections. This will expose the high and low areas, and I'll show you exactly what I mean. Now we're blocking in an X pattern or a crosshatch pattern. This is the best way to get your panel straight. So you can start to see there's a low area right here. We're hitting high areas on either side of it. So we're blocking down this filler until we get this panel level. And that's the goal of this entire process. If you start to break through into bare metal, you know that you have a high spot. And once you start hitting metal, you can start to see metal right here. We know that we're not going to be able to block down to get this straight. We're going to need to add filler, because this metal is going to keep us from getting a true straight block. It's not going to allow it to go down to the level of the low spot. It's not going to allow us to block down to get this straight. So once we see that and we're starting to break through right here, I'm going to move on to a different area. So I have a little bit of a high spot there, and I'm starting to break through here. So I know I'm going to need a little more filler in here. So we're going to move down to this section, but we want to see what's going on over here. I'm allowing the block and the sandpaper to do the work. Okay, we're hitting metal here, we're hitting metal here, and we still have our guide coat right here. So you can see that's a low area. And if I run my hand across it, I can feel that that's low and there's a low spot here. So we're going to move on to this section here. Now, what you don't want to do is you don't want to continue trying to block this and trying to get that guide coat out, because now you're removing your filler and you're just going to have to apply more filler. If you continue to block and remove filler without being aware of your high and low areas, then what you're going to do is it's just going to be a vicious cycle where you're never going to get that panel straight. You're just going to keep adding filler, keep blocking it out. You don't want to do that. You want that filler to do its job or level that repair out, and you want to leave the filler in there. See, now we're not breaking through anywhere yet. We've got a little low spot here. You can see the guide coat. It's starting to break through here. But once I break through, I'm going to want to stop. So there we go. Now we're down into metal here. So we're going to want to stop here. I'm going to clean up this edge right here. I'm going to block this section up here. I'm going to work it in sections. I'm going to put a piece of tape here. So the reason why we're doing this is because we don't want to get deep scratches up into this fender, because we don't want to blend into that. We want to avoid blending into the hood if at all possible. So I'm just going to, I know that this metal is straight right here. So this is just excess filler. We don't want to get these deep scratches up into this fender. So we'll just protect it a little bit. Blocking right down to this body line. We'll straighten that body line out later, and I'll show you how we do that. This is all blocking out nice and evenly, and that's really straight right there. We still have to block here a little bit. And that feels good as well. This is a little low right in here. Got some good results after our first coat of filler. We've got some high areas. This is a little wavy here, so we're going to need a thin coat of filler right on this section here. I'm going to mask off this section, and I'm going to mask off this body line. But first we need to find out where exactly this body line is supposed to run to get it nice and even all the way across here. Okay, so this is a body line tool. It's got a pencil here. It's got an adjustable block here, and this is how you use it. All you do is put it on the edge of your fender. You make sure you want to go where somewhere where you know the body line is good. Now it doesn't always work because some of these body lines aren't always uniform and the same size all the way around. This is just a guide, so we adjust it to the width of our fender here from edge to body line, and then we'll just run up this edge like this, and this will give us an idea of where that body line is supposed to be. What we're going to do is we're going to run tape on the outside of this body line and then on this edge, and then we'll just fill this section here, and then when we lay filler on the top section, we'll put tape on the bottom of that line. Let me clarify something when I talk about the high spots in this fender. These areas where we broke through into bare metal are high in comparison to the repair or the filler around them. This doesn't mean they're higher than the natural shape of the fender. If that were the case, then we would need to tap that metal down. So if this fender was completely straight, but we had one breakthrough area where we broke through into bare metal, we would want to tap that down before we applied more filler. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on in this video. Okay, we've got some upol filler here. I'm just going to mix this up. Now when you're mixing up your filler, you want to fold it in. You don't want to stir it. You want to make sure it's all folded in well. Now I'm using a silicone-based spreader here, which is a little softer. And this is good in certain situations, but it's the right size for this, so that's why I'm using it here. I'm going to press this out and try and press out any any air that's in here. Now this is a pretty smooth filler. This is upol lightweight gold. I'm just going to get a little bit on my spreader here, and I'm going to start just by filling these low areas that I know are low. And then what I'll do is I'll start at one end I'm going to add a little bit of filler right here very carefully. I don't want to mess up that line, but I'm just going to add a little filler here since I got some extra filler. Now we're ready to block out this filler. We're going to use some 80 grit. We'll block it first, and then once we get it a little bit straighter, we will put some guide coat on it so we can see what's going on. But the filler color is kind of acting as a guide coat, so you'll be able to see. I can see there's a low spot right there. We need to block down to that. We're just adding some guide coat. You can see it's coming out nice and straight. Little low spot there. That's right on that body line. The little low spot there. Now we're not breaking through anywhere, so we can continue to block this filler down. There's a little bit of a low spot. You can see a little, just a hint of guide coat right there, but I can block down to this because I'm not breaking through into bare metal. Nothing, this is all filler. So this whole section is ready to be sanded with 180 grit sandpaper, okay? We're gonna block over it again with 180. You can see it's starting to get, I can almost see bare metal through there, but we still have filler. So we have enough material on there that we can remove those 80 grit scratches, refine it to 180, and move on to the next step. Let's go ahead and block this upper area here. I'm just blocking down to this line. Now you could put tape on this, and if I have to put more filler on here, I'm gonna tape this off. This all feels really good. But when we come over to here, we've got high metal right here. This is going to need to be tapped down because I know this is straight. I can't just put filler over here. I'd have to fill this whole thing and then block down to the bare metal. So what I'm going to do is tap down this bare metal, and then we'll just put a skim coat of maybe glaze over this, maybe filler. It's not going to take a whole lot. I'm going to use my pick here. Be more precise. Okay, my goal here is to get that metal just lower than this filler. Just so when I put a skim coat over here, I can block down to that metal and this will be straight. That all feels good. We can hit that with 180. And I'm going to use a flexible block on this section right here with 180.
I'm now ready to block this with 180 to remove those 80 grit scratches, so we'll use guide coat to identify when those scratches have been removed. You never want to apply primer over a coarse scratch like 80 grit. Primer will shrink in that scratch. You'll be able to see it in your repair. I went ahead and masked off that body line again, and we'll finish blocking this with the 180 grit sandpaper and move on to the next step.
Okay, we're now ready for a little bit of icing. This is a little bit of polyester glazing putty. This is going to fill any low areas. We've got a little low area right around this body line. A couple little pinholes here, so we're going to fill those. But I take this off so we can get a nice crisp body line. So we'll mix this up. Okay, so I got some on my spreader here. I'm going to gradually blend this in. Okay, might as well put a thin coat over the rest of this. This is just a very thin coat. It's going to be very easy to sand out. The tape. There is a little pinhole right here I'm going to fill. A couple little imperfections there.
Off camera, I went ahead and blocked out this glaze. We knocked it down with 180 first, and then we blocked over this entire repair with 320 grit sandpaper. Now what I'm doing is I'm taking my orbital sander with a soft interface pad and some 320 grit sandpaper, and we're just sanding over the edges and over the filler to smooth it out. This is just a light sanding, and it will not affect the blocking that we've already done. I just want to remove those 180 grit scratches before we primer. Next, I'll machine sand over the outside edge of this repair with 600 grit sandpaper. This is just to prep the surface outside the repair in case of overspray from the primer. The next step is to clean this with isopropyl alcohol. We'll mask it off and apply 2 coats of 2K urethane primer. We'll do the blocking on that and then the painting. All that in the next episode. I hope you found this information helpful. If you did, support the channel by subscribing, liking, sharing this video, and definitely leave me a comment down below. I appreciate each and every one of you watching, and we'll see you next time on Garage Noise.